Gonna work because, let's see, new share. There we go. You can see it
All
now,
right,
can't you?
I think so. All right, everyone. Hello and welcome to Special Education Funding 101. This is the second training in our education funding series, and this is put on by the Michigan League for Public Policy and the Michigan Education Justice Coalition. I am Alex. I'm the Education Policy Analyst for MLPP. Thank you for joining us today. Just to do a little due diligence about my place of work, the Michigan League for Public Policy. We're a nonpartisan research and advocacy organization that promotes economic opportunity for all. We analyze the impact of public policy on the lives of Michiganders who've been systemically left out of prosperity. We work to improve health, educational, and economic security well-being for all Michiganders, but especially those with low incomes and persons living in community of color. We are also home to the state's Kid Count organization, working as part of a national effort to measure the well-being of children at the state and local levels. And if you were here at the last training, I promise for the next one, I will switch out my slides so that we aren't looking at the same intro slides every time. But Molly, if you want to skip ahead 2 more, you can go to the next one if you want. Thank you. So our 3 pillars of work here at MLPP are data, community, and advocacy, and all of our work is rooted in advancing racial equity and pursuing justice.
It's my turn. So the other partner is the Michigan Education Justice Coalition. And so we are a statewide network of community organizations that organize parents, students, educators, school staff across the state to make sure that our voices are the loudest in policy decisions about schools. So you can see a smattering of our partners across the state. I'm Molly. I'm from 482 Forward in Detroit. At the Michigan Education Justice Coalition, we have a committee, a working group on school funding that is co-chaired by myself, Perry Stone Palmquist from Student Advocacy Center, Autumn Butler from Oakland Forward, who's actually in charge of these trainings, so I'm substituting for her tonight, and Elnora Gavin from Benton Harbor, who works for We the People. So we're excited to be here because a big piece of our goals as a network is to make sure that we're demystifying for regular folks school funding. We know that what gets allocated is where we budget is where we put our values, and we want to make sure our values are in the budgets. Money is power, and we need to understand how it works to build our power. So this series is really about demystifying that and then working together to make sure we have a say in what happens with our school funding. Oh, okay. So what inspired this, right? So that point, right? Power is understanding money. We get, every time we talk about school funding, people ask us, where's the lottery money? Like there's those big billboards on 75 and 94, like 1.3 billion from the lottery. So, I mean, we hope tonight you'll walk away with understanding of special ed funding, but also a little bit of where is the lottery money and how it fits into the larger pie of school funding that we need to grow. So, has anyone ever asked that, put in the chat? Have you ever asked where is the lottery money? Raise your hand in the chat. It's the number 1 question we get. So hopefully Alex can help us answer that tonight.
Not there, just kidding. Okay, so before we get going on our special education funding 101, just to let you guys know, because I have a couple screens going on, it's not going to be easy for me to see if you have like your hands raised. So if you do have a question as we go, feel free to put it in the chat. If someone from MEJC can and wants to answer it, they can feel free to do so. If it doesn't get addressed right away, please feel free to bring it up again at the end. There will be some opportunities for breakout rooms during the presentation today, and then a debriefing at the end. So we try to make sure that we leave enough time for everyone to chat. All right, it's time, Molly. First breakout room. Oh, you're muted, Molly.
Yeah, it's me. Sorry, I'm on mute. I'm going to ask Rochelle to help me out a little bit. So there's a lot of folks on the call, and one also reason we want everyone in this training is to get to know each other. Organizing is also about building people power, which is about relationships. So we're going to put you all in some small groups. Don't worry, there's not tons of breakouts, but we want you to start talking. So Rochelle, if we can do like groups of, I don't know, 5, And in the groups, all we want you to talk about is like, what is one question you have about special education funding? What is one question you have about special education funding? It might be that I know nothing about it. I'd like to learn all the things. And we want one person in your group to take notes and come back to the chat and put all your questions from your group in the chat so that Alex can get a sense of like where people are with their understanding of special ed funding. Rochelle, is that all right?
I am trying to figure out, I think you're the host. I made you the host.
Oh, I do breakout rooms. Just kidding. You made me host. I forgot. Okay. All right. You're going to be in groups of 5 and you're going to go around and just say, what is one question you have? Make sure one of you is a note taker. And then when you come back from the groups, you're only going to have 5 minutes. So when you come back from the groups, put all of your questions in the chat. All right. Rooms are open. There you go. Join your rooms. For folks who just joined, I'm going to put you in a breakout room and you're asking one question you have about special education. Sorry, Rochelle, I forgot that you made me the host. All right, if folks are having trouble joining the breakout rooms, feel free to put your questions in the chat. Hi, for folks who just joined, we're in breakout rooms for just a few more minutes. We're talking about what questions folks have about special education in the breakout rooms. So if you have any, please put them in the main chat. People are chatting in the rooms. I can see their microphones moving, Alex.
Oh, funny. Good.
So interesting.
I hope I answer stuff today that people are wondering about.
What I want to say to folks when they come back, if we don't answer some of those questions, we're going to save the chat. I think that's one of the things we want to know is like, are we getting to people's questions?
Yeah. It was really great last time when you guys were, or whoever was answering.
Yeah. Tanner was helping a lot.
I know I texted him today. I'm like, are you going to be there?
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna give people one more minute.
Do you happen to know the overlap of people who were at last training and this training?
I don't, but maybe we could ask people to put in the chat like a why if you were at the last training.
It's hard for me to see it anyway, so it's like,
Yeah, it's fine. I'm gonna monitor the chat for you.
thanks.
I'll ping you, Alex, and interrupt if there's any like burning questions.
Yeah, if something's like what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, otherwise it's hard because it interrupts you. I'm gonna close the rooms.
All right.
And Alex, if you can say that when you come back, is like, we're gonna try to get to these, the ones that we don't, we'll try to make sure we answer. Even if not now, in a later training. People are talking, that's good.
Yeah, that's good. I'm not surprised. It's a good topic.
Hey, Rochelle. We have a few autopilot, though she's not, she's on another call. We have like autopilots in here.
Mhm.
All right, welcome back, folks. Welcome back.
That was the quickest 5 minutes ever.
Welcome. See, you know what's funny? I could see all your microphones going up and down while I was monitoring the rooms. I knew you were talking. It was really fun. Okay, so if you have a note taker, you want to put as many of those questions in the chat. And what we're gonna do is Alex is going, where do you begin? Alex is going to try to answer as many of those as possible in today's training. If we don't get to those, we'll be able to hopefully either send something out or have a part 2. So we are really trying to get a sense of where people are at, try to answer them, and then be able to either send out answers that we can't answer today or do a part 2. So, okay, Alex.
All right, guys. Hopefully I will answer a bunch of your questions as I go through this presentation today. Yeah, for sure. For sure. I'm gonna get to all these. Okay, I gotta stop looking at the questions or I'll never get to this. Okay, so hopefully some of you joining us today were at the training 2 weeks ago. But if at any time you're thinking like, oh my gosh, I don't understand the basics of school funding to kind of conceptualize what I'm talking about today, we can get you a link to that School Funding 101 training that we did have a couple weeks ago. So if you're kind of thinking like, oh, I'm missing some background knowledge here, don't worry, we can help you out and we can get you that training. So the goal of today, so I want you guys to understand the basics of special education services. We'll very quickly go over that because I'm sure most of you know that. Understand the basics of special education funding and then gain some tools to engage and advocate for the things that you guys are passionate about and that you need. I do need to give you a little caveat that special education funding can be very complicated. The history of special education funding nationally and in Michigan is a lot. And so I'm going to do my best today to get you guys a good basic understanding of information without getting too into the weeds about like lawsuits and things like that. But I will provide some sources in the chat as I go through. All right. Sorry, I'm gonna do this right here. Okay, so I know that most everyone here has some personal experience with working with special education students, but just for a little background for those who might not know, there's 2 main protections for students with disabilities. The first is the Individuals with Disabilities Act that was signed into law by President Ford in 1975. Among other things like providing some funding, IDEA guarantees that all students with disabilities receive a free and appropriate public education. So this means that students with disabilities do not pay for the services that they need in order to receive a public education. This also means that the appropriate part means that education must be designed to meet the individual needs of that student. So that's the free and appropriate public education is a really important part of IDEA, and least restrictive environment is also something that if you're in special education circles, you will probably hear a lot of. So least restrictive environment means that students with disabilities must be educated with general education students to the maximum extent possible. I was a public educator for 8 years, and I can't recall a single hour I had that did not have a special education student in it. And I tended to think back then, and I still do, of my special education students as general education students. They're all general ed students, but some students who have special education needs are entitled to certain modifications and accommodations. So that's IDEA. And then the Michigan Administrative Rules for Special Education is state laws and rules that kind of lays out how special education services should be implemented in schools. A lot of these rules have to do with the student's individualized education plan, or an IEP. And that's the written document that outlines a student's needs and required services. All right, so about 15% of the students in Michigan receive special education services. And there are 13 different categories that can qualify or make a student eligible to receive these services. And they're all listed on the screen in these little honeycomb things. So this can be anything from a health condition like asthma or vision impairments, to emotional impairments, to very specific learning disabilities like dyslexia or dysgraphia. Likewise, the type and kind of intensity of services required for these students can also vary quite a bit. All right, so now for the fun stuff of why the heck you're here. How do we fund all of these services? If you were here for the training 2 weeks ago, we broke the state education budget down into 3 main funding streams: federal money, state money, and local funds. And we're going to kind of follow that same format today with special education funding. So the special education budget totals $3.5 billion. And as you can see, federal funds account for that light blue part at the bottom, which is about $461 million. State funds account for $1.8 billion, and local funds are predicted to account for about $1.3 billion. If you were at the last training, I put a very similar kind of stacked chart on the screen about where funding comes from for education in general. And I wish I would have put it on here, but that's okay. Because if you compare the two, it's kind of interesting how much more local contribution makes up the special education funding. And we'll talk about why that is. All right, here we go. Federal funds. So IDEA funds about 15% of special education services. These funds usually flow from the federal government to the state government, and then to the intermediate school districts, and then to the local districts. A couple of the line items in the School Aid Act that are federal funds is Section 51A, 51A1, which is reimbursements to the intermediate school districts. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And then Section 51D, which are grants that flow to the state and then to the ISDs. So this is very similar to how federal funds work in the general education budget that we talked about before. So from the feds to the state. All right, the state funds. So in total, the state provides $1.8 billion for special education in this year's budget. There are 9 different line items in this part of the education budget, and I want to highlight a few different sections. So if you actually open up the education budget and you take a look and you're looking for where the specific money that goes to special education is, you would scroll on down to these sections. So, and I listed most of them up there, but the ones I want to talk about specifically are Section 51A2, which is $368 million in this year's budget, so the school year that we're in right now, and Section 51C, which is $821 million. So this money reimburses either intermediate school districts or local school districts for 28.6% of the cost of providing special education services. So as a school district or as an intermediate school district, however much money I spend on providing special education services, these line items will reimburse the ISDs in the districts for 28.6% of that cost. Additionally, the ISDs in local districts are reimbursed 70% of the cost for special education transportation. We'll talk a little bit more about this whole reimbursement thing in a little bit. Okay, actually, no, I got it right here. So of the states that use this reimbursement model for special education, Michigan provides the lowest reimbursement rate. Wyoming uses a reimbursement model. However, they reimburse 100% of the cost of special education services. So that's at 51A and 51C. The next part I want to highlight is section 51E. So this is money that provides the foundation allowance amount for special education students. So if you guys have heard of like that per pupil funding, where every single student in the state gets $9,608 for, being in a school, plus or minus some more for categorical or weights. So this section is to provide that for special education students, not in addition to the foundation allowance that everyone else receives, but the foundation allowance in addition to the reimbursement. This was not the case before the fiscal year 2023 budget. So we are now only in the second budget where students who are special education receive their foundation allowance amount. There is a little bit of math involved here. There is a little bit of a formula, but I'm not going to get into the weeds of that. However, if you're interested in why the heck we do this, like why the heck that's the case, this difference between the foundation and the reimbursement, I am going to put something in the chat for you right now if you would like to read that. It's a little bit of historical context about how we got here. And I do see that someone asked if we will be getting a copy of the slides, and yes, we will have both a recording of the presentation and a PDF of the slides available for you. All right. We're flying, Molly.
Alex, there's a question that was DM'd me, but is that the same foundation allowance, the same amount as a general ed
Oh.
student?
Yes, it is. It's the same foundation amount now. And this is actually the first year that it's the same foundation amount. Yeah, you figured. No, it's a good question. Because before this, remember that special education students only received the reimbursement portion of funding. They didn't get the foundation amount. Last year in fiscal year 23, so the 2022-2023 school year, they received 70% of the foundation plus the reimbursement. Now special education students are receiving 100% of the foundation, so the same number that general education students receive plus the reimbursement. All right. So now moving on to local funds. And if you guys remember from last week, or if you're familiar with how the state education budget kind of goes, local funds don't really play a huge role in the operating funds for school districts. A lot of what we talked about a couple weeks ago was school facility funds. However, local funds are super, super important for special education funding, specifically the role that the ISD plays with providing services. So some ISDs provide all special education services for the schools in their districts or for the schools in their jurisdiction. In other ISDs, they provide some of like a blend of the services, and then the local district will provide some of the services as well. So for example, in the district that I worked for, we used a blend of like our local district money and then ISD services to provide all the services for special ed students. So if I had a student who required a paraprofessional for something like taking a test in a private room without any time constraints, our local district would hire that paraprofessional and provide that service. However, if I had a student that required something like speech therapy or occupational therapy or a paraprofessional, like a one-on-one paraprofessional situation, then the intermediate school district would provide that, would hire that person, pay for it, and provide that to that student. So in a lot of districts or in a lot of ISDs, they provide at least some of the services. In some ISDs, they provide all of the special education services. So here is the very, very, very important thing about special education funding. Every ISD in the state of Michigan levies some local special education millage. These millages must be approved by voters, just like we talked about a couple weeks ago with millages for things like school facilities. The state does cap how much an ISD can levy from these millages. And as we know that there's a ton of inequity baked into this kind of funding. So it inevitably results in unequal local contributions to special education services because some ISDs have more tax revenue than other ISDs. And the state does try and equalize. The state does try and help this inequity out by having a millage equalization and incentive line in the special education funding. However, it's not funded very well. It just doesn't really work great. So you'll have some ISDs that are able to levy a ton of money with a low millage rate, and you'll have other ISDs who aren't able to levy a ton of money with a higher millage rate. So it's just a very inequitable system. I did not add the math slides in this time, but if anyone would like the math slides about how millage rates work, I am happy to send them to you. All right, so obviously we have some problems with our education, our special education funding in Michigan. Overall, there's not enough funding. 28.6% of the reimbursement rate is low. The reimbursement model is interesting in general. And then of course we have some inequitable resources between ISDs and the ability to fund special education services. So when a big kind of problem that comes out of this funding is that when schools go to pay for these services that they have to provide, they legally have to provide these students, they often have to reach into their general education budget to cover the cost of special education services that aren't being covered otherwise. Now, I want to be very, very careful and clear here that I'm not saying this to pit special education students against general education students, because that's not the case. I'm saying this to highlight the fact that underfunding special education is an everybody problem, that this is something that affects all students, all teachers, and that this is a problem that if we fix it will help everybody. So yeah, there's that. The good news. So in January, Governor Whitmer released her budget, and she did include a fix to this equity problem that we just talked about with the ISDs. So her budget recommends redesigning Section 56, or that millage equalization and incentive line of the school budget. I will also put in the chat, I know the chat is really busy right now, so maybe I shouldn't. I'm probably going to anyway. I will put my work, the MLPP's first look at the governor's budget in the chat. So if anyone is interested in what the governor's budget says about K-12 funding, it is in this document. And if you're interested in what the governor's budget says in any other area, it is also in that document. But the governor's budget does recommend a fix to this inter-ISD inequality by increasing funding to reduce the gap of available funding and required costs. And I think we have another breakout. Is that right, Molly?
We do, if I can get off mute, we do. Okay, and we're gonna do breakouts for 3 minutes. So I know you gotta talk fast. And there's 2 questions. What is still confusing you and what is surprising you? So we are going to send you to breakouts again. What is still confusing after Alex's presentation, and what was surprising? And again, a note taker. And we're going to
talk about advocating. So if you're still like waiting for, hey, what can I do?
Yes.
Look, I will get there, I promise.
And we have 2 big ways you can do that. All right, go to the rooms. What is still confusing? What was surprising?
We can probably give them a little longer, Molly. I feel like I flew through that.
Okay, yeah, we can give 5 minutes. Yeah.
And actually, that'll give me a little bit of time to look.
Oh, for folks who are unassigned, I'm going to assign you. You weren't part of the group, so and there you go. Join your groups. There you go. And Alex, I'll review the MAJC budget asks around special ed too.
Yeah, please.
And then
I
we
think
have a
that-
petition they can sign.
Oh, that's so good. Okay. Hmm.
All right, folks, if anyone's having trouble getting to breakout rooms, let us know.
Already this low.
Alex, and do you want folks to I guess you'll put it in the chat, and then do we want to take questions from folks? Look at Rochelle's face when she saw that.
Whatever you think.
Maybe going over what's still confusing, if they say there's
Okay.
still is going back, I mean, like, let's clarify that again. Maybe say it a little differently. Great job, that was great.
Thanks. This was harder than the last one to distill. Because like, you know, there's like Durant and the Headley Amendment and like all of that. And I'm like, ugh.
I realized the lottery money one wasn't gonna be on here. For some reason, I thought you were gonna do a quick overview.
Oh, I should have.
We should do it at the very end. If you could put, I can pull up the other slides.
Thank you, Heather, for answering that question. Karen wants the millage info. Honestly, maybe I should just go over the millages again.
Let's see what they say.
I think that everything else in the chat got answered by Heather and Tanner, which is awesome.
I know, Heather and Tanner are like, look at our committee work together. Revenue committee or school funding committee, unite. We should have a chant.
Oh, that's so funny.
These are getting a lot of registrations. There were 100 people registered and 50 are here.
Wow, that's awesome.
It's great. Means there's a need.
Yeah. Even just talking to my friends, I'm like, you guys need to come to this training.
Yeah, I
Tell my
agree.
mom, I'm like, Mom, you need to register. Like,
She should come. It's always good to have a parent join these. I like when my parents come to trainings. I do. I always think it's silly.
no, that's so cute.
It's funny. All right, should we bring them back?
Do it.
Okay. And then Alex, you'll answer kind of what's been confusing, and then we'll go to the regular process, and then we'll
Are
talk
you
about
gonna
Bobby
have them
Day.
put it in the chat?
Yeah.
Okay.
Welcome back, folks. All right, drop your what's still confusing, what was surprising in the chat. They're not back yet. They're still chatting.
Oh, that's funny. They're gonna wait till it closes.
Yeah, they're gonna be saying it's not enough time, which is good. Breakouts means breakouts are good.
Yeah.
Rochelle, did you know this? You can see all their microphones talking. Hey, Rochelle's another. Hey, Perry. Welcome
Did
back,
you
y'all.
set people straight, Perry?
What's that?
Did you set everyone straight in your group?
I think special ed funding is really hard to understand.
It
It's
is-
so hard. Welcome back, y'all.
I have my notes from David Arson's class right here.
All right, y'all. in the chat. Feel free to put what was still confusing or what was surprising. And if there's some burning, what was still confusing, you can say it out loud. I see group one out. All right, Alex, you want to start answering group ones?
Okay, an ISD. Michigan is, oh wait, that's group 2.
Group two, sorry, group two, question one.
It's happening. All right, what's an ISD? An ISD is an intermediate school district. Every county in Michigan has an intermediate school district, and they're kind of like this middleman between the State Department of Education of MDE and the local districts. They provide a lot of services to local districts. However, as you can tell, a big one is providing special education services. Not every state has ISDs. Michigan is one that does. Yeah, and like I said, they're kind of a middle body between local districts and MDE. What is going on with Section 56 redesign? Well, hopefully, since Tanner was in your group, he gave you a.
Can you remind us what section 56 is again?
So that's that millage equalization section, the last bullet point on here. So this is where the state had to guarantee ISDs a minimum level per pupil when they raise a millage, and it encourages ISDs to increase these millages when they do special education millages. You should also note when ISDs do these special education millages, when they put them out, hey, we need to raise so much money, it's going to cost you guys this much per person, per household. What was I going with that? Anyway, when they have voters vote on these millages, usually they're quite long. They're usually like 10. I have 10 to 20 years. They only need to be renewed every 10 to 20 years usually. The Section 56 redesign adds a bunch of money into the millage equalization, and I believe, Tanner, you might want to pipe in that it also.
Yeah, I was gonna say I can take a shot at it, right? So
For it.
the current Section 56 is not bad. It's a guaranteed tax-based system. So ISDs have these local property taxes, right? But some communities are really rich and some communities are relatively poor, and the guaranteed tax-based system tries to bump up the less affluent communities, and that's a good thing. Like, it's a good program, but it's not particularly well calibrated to the actual problem, the difference in cost in special ed students across districts. And so the new formula takes that into account, and really really would go a long way to fixing the inequity between ISDs, which is kind of the heart of the inequity in special ed funding across the state. So short version is the current version is good. The new version is considerably better at addressing the actual problem.
Thank you, Tanner. And your third question, how fast will the budget go through the system? Do you mean like, I'm assuming you mean like this next budget cycle? And if that is what you mean, that's my very next slide. And we're going to talk about where we are in the budget cycle, where we're going, and how you can advocate at different parts. So I will get there. All right. Surprising how little is being funded, honestly. And that fully funding means the student's getting per pupil allowance on top of special ed funding. Yes. So for the very first time this year, if I'm a special education student, I carry my per pupil funding of $9,000, plus my district will get 28.6% of my cost reimbursement for the first time. Crazy. Where the line is for funding different services, ISDs are providing funding in some areas and not others. Yes, ISDs do provide funding to schools for services. Yeah, they can. So they can either like hire paraprofessionals and hire therapists and things like that. And then the therapists can actually go to the schools. That is one way that ISDs will work. In other areas, the districts hire people that they want to. I don't know if ISDs just like cut a check to districts for things like that.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, depends.
Okay, where the line is for funding different services.
Was that one about different types of students with different types of disabilities? Feel free to pipe up if that's your question.
Not sure. Sorry if group 9 wants to clarify that question. Group 4, the relationship between ISDs and local districts, that I can definitely see why that would be confusing. And that's because it really is different for every single school district and every single ISD. Some ISDs have a much more active role in districts than others. Some have kind of a further relationship. Part of that has to do with geography. Where I worked, it was Ionia County. And our ISD was so geographically far away from our school that it was kind of hard for the ISD to provide us with paraprofessionals and things like that. It just didn't really make sense. And so it just was easier for us to kind of hire our own people to go to the schools. And we used the ISD a lot for consulting sort of things, or for things that might only require like one employee for the entire ISD, like someone to run special education testing, things like that. So it really does vary from ISD to ISD and district to district. Yes, the ISDs are incredibly important. Yeah, Michigan doesn't do great with that reimbursement model, do they?
All right, other questions?
Heather.
Why are there so many contractual teachers, special education teachers?
Sorry, say that again, Molly. I was reading.
This was why are there so many contractual teachers? I think there was a. It's a great question. I don't have the answer to that one, but I think we could find that out. Heather answered the one.
Yeah, thank you for that, Heather.
What gets reimbursed? What specifically is getting reimbursed from the state?
So let's say I require a paraprofessional, testing, occupational therapy, those types of things that schools have to pay for. So if you remember, IDEA says that kids who have disabilities are entitled to free public education. They do not have to pay for it. And if there's something that is stopping me as a student from learning in a public setting due to a disability, then that school has to pay for the service. Sometimes those services can be really expensive. Sometimes students don't require a ton of services. So the schools have to pay for it. Why is it underfunded? That's a great question. I think Molly said it best earlier, that our budget reflects our priorities, and I think that we need to start prioritizing this a little bit more. However, there's only so much money in the school aid budget. There's only so much money to go around, and we can divide it up in ways to be more equitable. We can divide it up in ways to help get these special education students more funding. But until we start talking about increasing the pot, there's only so much rearranging of funds we can do.
All right, let's see.
And yes, the millages are not as effective in underserved communities. You are 100% correct.
Hey, Alex, I think it's also important to note that no one person designed our system of special ed finance. And so part of the reason it doesn't make any sense is because nobody actually designed it. We live under basically Durant, which was a court case, which was just the state saying, what do we minimally have to do to not break the state's constitution? And then we accepted that for 20 years.
And what do we minimally have to do to not get in trouble with the feds?
Yeah.
So what Tanner's referencing with Durant, I'm gonna add into the chat again, if anyone wants a little bit of historical context of how the heck we got to like this messy system. If anyone digs into education funding, it's kind of funny, I guess funny, not funny, that a lot of how we fund education is really due to lawsuits, is really due to people suing the state and being like, hey, we actually have a right to this thing called education, and what you guys are funding right now is not enough to fund it. And so, yeah, that Durant piece is a really nice piece to kind of highlight how all that happened.
Last one, why is the state so low compared to others, and will new budget help that?
Okay, so the governor's budget that I referenced is the governor's budget. That's just what she's recommending. So actually, Molly, if you want to go to the next slide. So as you can see, in February, the governor released her proposed budget. Now what happens from February to April is that the appropriation subcommittees in the House and in the Senate, they're going to meet and they are going to draft their own versions of what they think the budget should look like. Of course, using what came out of the economic conference and what came out of the governor's budget. As that's happening, as these subcommittees are meeting and talking about what they want to do with the budget, they are listening to people like us. They are listening to our input. Hey, we really, really like this about the governor's budget. Hey, we don't think that this goes far enough. And then hopefully they are using that information to craft their version. Sometime between April and May, the subcommittee budgets are going to move through the House and the Senate. I'm sure that there will be some amendments. There will be some committee level changes. But then by late May, early June, probably more like early June this year, there will be a joint House and Senate conference committee to meet and iron out the differences between the budgets. So the House has one, the Senate has one, they got to bring it together and they got to come up with some sort of combination of the budgets. Then between June and October 1st, the legislature must present their final budget to the governor. She has to sign it by July 1. Of course, she can say this line item, nope, and veto it, but the budget has to be signed by October 1st. And then it all starts over again in October. So right now is really the time that the subcommittees are meeting and that they're going to be crafting their own versions of the budget. What else I want to tell you about that? Oh, we do have an interesting thing going on in the House of Representatives right now. 2 representatives decided that they wanted to run for mayor in their hometowns. And so these 2 Democratic representatives ran for mayor, won their elections. And so they are now sworn in as mayors of their hometowns, which means that the House, it now has an even split of Republicans and Democrats, which, as everyone knows, is going to make it harder to get things passed through. There will be a special election in April to fill those 2 seats. Until that happens, a lot of things are probably not moving through the House in terms of bills, which means that they have a lot of time to focus on the budget. So is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? We'll see. All right.
So a few things on advocacy for Next Step, and I'm going to have Rochelle share in the chat, is the Michigan Education Justice Coalition School Funding Committee has made a very broad, but actually very specific, broad categories, very specific asks to the legislature about how we want the state budget to shift to better meet the needs of special education students, at-risk students, Black students, low-income students across the state. So we will be going to Lansing on April 30th for a lobby day, if you'd like to join us. So Rochelle in the chat is dropping the registration. One thing we know about the legislature in this period of time, it is really important to have, to actually be there talking to folks in their offices about what we want. We've heard from many legislators that that's one of the most impactful ways for folks to really understand what people want in the community, but also to make sure your voice is getting amplified and compared to like other lobbyists who are trying to get money out of the budget. What we can do right now, I'm going to stop sharing, and didn't put this in the agenda, but I think it's really important. We can show you the special education asks from MEJC. So give me 1 second. Let me pull it up. You're gonna see, and we just finished these, so they haven't gone live yet. But we're sending them over to the legislature and we voted on them.
While Molly pulls that up, one of the things that I did to really learn how this whole process works and to watch it work is I started watching the Appropriation Committee meetings. So if you go to the Michigan Senate website, the Michigan House of Representatives website, you can see their calendar for when the Education Committee is meeting, when the appropriations, like the people who are dealing with the money, voting on money, when they are meeting, and you can watch them. You can watch what they're talking about and you can listen to their meetings. And for me, that really helped me understand how this process works. And so I highly recommend, if you're able to take a look at the calendar, that'll show you who is meeting, when they're meeting, what they're talking about, and tune in.
And don't judge my tabs like Alex did. So MEJC worked for the whole year making budget asks to the state. First thing that is really important, and I'm gonna go over this, then the special education one. In order for anything in the state for education to achieve adequacy, meaning every kid gets what they need, including special education students, we would need an extra $4.5 billion in new revenue every year in our state budget. And so when folks are talking about like, how come when I saw an increase, I didn't notice it on the ground? It's because we are severely underfunded towards what we call adequate, meaning every kid gets what they need. This would mean that the state needs to find new money, which is through taxing wealthy folks and corporations in the state. So the first thing is like, in order for us to do any of this, we have to we have to grow the pie. We can't keep moving money around. We don't have enough money. So, but let me talk about the special education ask. So we're going to be sending these out to folks on our social media in a much better format. But for special education, and actually Tanner's on this call. Tanner can spot me on this, but we want the state to create a new program to reimburse districts for special education students requiring high-cost programming and allocating an extra $20 million to that. We want to eliminate that special education millage caps and amend the revised school code to make sure that there's equalization. We want to establish a funding formula that reduces that inter-district ISD inequity. But in supportive of the governor's budget, which rewrites the Section 56, which we just all talked about. And then we want the state to continue to provide that 100% per pupil. So right now, that's just at the will of the legislature. Like tomorrow, if the legislature wanted to change it, they could. We want to make sure they're doing that. So I don't know, Tanner, if you want to say anything else, but it's really important you join us. Oh, go ahead, Tanner.
I think you nailed it. Sorry, that's all.
There you go. And so it's really important that we're hoping you all will join us in our lobby day. We are going to send out a email form that will allow you to email all of the appropriations chairs at the state level who are the decision makers right now and the governor to say, hey, we support MEJC's budget asks because we have to be the loudest in the state on these things. I don't know, Perry, if you want to say anything or anyone else from the revenue committee, but we will be sending these out. Go ahead. Go ahead, Perry.
Of course, I want to say something, which is I think especially these asks, these special education asks, I think it's going to be really important to hear all these asks, it's going to be really important, but I think what happened last year, we really made a point to talk about that 100% per pupil funding, and folks seem shocked, and I try not to take credit where it's not due, but I don't think that was really being talked about. And I really think that the advocacy of MEJC on Advocacy Day, they're having those conversations really made a huge difference. Anyone can argue with me, that's true. But anyway, I really hope folks will come and make a point to talk about those specific asks. I think that they'll be quite impactful.
And then Rochelle did drop a very quick email link where folks can email the legislators right now saying you support MEJC's budget asks. And that will go to the governor, the appropriations chairs of the education committees and the state appropriations, the money committees, and then the Speaker of the House and Speaker of the Senate. Okay, Alex, I'm gonna reshare your slides.
All right, I just have a few more things about advocating. So a big part of advocating is doing what you guys are all doing right now and just trying to learn a little bit more about how this process works, how the budget works, and what you can do to play a role in this. And just so everyone knows, the Michigan League for Public Policy, MLPP.org, has a ton of resources about the budget and about advocating. So if you guys go over to our website, you will see that we have an analysis of the current budget year, so the budget that we're in right now. We have our people's budget, which basically we sit down as a league and we come up with what we think that we need to focus on to help the people of Michigan. We call it the people's budget, and we put together some asks, kind of like MEJC does. And because we work with people like MEJC, we make sure that our people budget kind of coincides with budgets like our partners. We will have a ton of ongoing updates on the budget. We have a first look at the governor's budget right now that highlights things in it as well that align with our budget asks from the people's budget. We have tons of fact sheets, infographics, reports on revenue issues, and importantly, you can sign up for legislative updates by clicking or typing in mlpp.org/under-the-dome. You can get a whole bunch of updates from us. And the next slide just kind of shows you what that looks like on our website. You can just click get updates, and you guys can get lots of updates from us. And I don't know if the QR code will work if you scan it from your computer, but if you are interested in one of these fundings, one of these trainings, another one, we are doing it same time, same place on April 17th on school facilities and transportation funding. And then of course, don't forget about Lobby Day. I gotta put that in my calendar.
Yeah. Yes, you do. And we'll drop the link right now. So the next one, yes, school facilities and transportation. And we are going to drop a link right now. Since we're at the end, you can give us feedback on how today's training was. Please fill it out. Trina, the director of MEJC, will be very happy with us when we do that. So please fill it out because we want to keep doing these. It's Rochelle. I'm just kidding. We want to keep doing these. We know there's a need. We want to make sure that these are meeting the needs of families across the state and school staff and students so that folks can really demystify money so we can start actually having a say in it. Again, register for Lobby Day, support us in the MEJC budget asks, and enjoy your evening.
And if anyone does want the last training video and or slides, if you could send me a message, so don't click on meeting group chat, but click on Alexander Stam, hopefully that's what I'm in there as, and list your email in a message to me, I will get that to you. And Jerica, I already have your email written down. Especially people who have questions about like millages, like what the heck is that? Got some simple math problems for you.
Oh, and Alex, last thing. Where's the, can you show us, I made a mistake. What about the lottery money?
Yeah, it's like 7% of the school budget.
It's only 7% of
Drop
the
in
school budget.
bucket.
7% of the state's part of the school budget.
Yeah.
So it's like 4 or 5% of the total.
So we were all thought that just gambling, we would just raise all the money for the schools, but in fact, we have to tax the wealthy in Michigan. Who would have thought? All right, y'all, thank you so much. Enjoy your night.
Hey Molly, I need to copy these email addresses down or screenshot them or something. So
Yeah, we
don't-
can, the chat will save too.
even my direct messages.
No.
Great, guys.
Okay, let me write them down. I'll be quick, I promise.
Perry,
Bye,
did-
Perry.
Bye, guys. Good job. I want a copy of the presentation.
Good
Hopefully-
job too, Perry.
Yeah, me too. I put my.
Perry, I
email-
was trying to text you because Rochelle was, I was like, we're gonna share it. Can we share it? It just says support MEJC's budget asks. Is that okay?
Yeah, I haven't seen it, I don't think,
Oh,
but
I sent it out this morning.
you did? I don't think I saw that, but I've been in meetings all day.
It's fine. It's pretty simple. It's like exactly the same one we did last year.
Oh, can you send it to me again?
Yeah, actually, Will you drop the link, Rochelle?
Let's see, can I, I don't know, can I? Where are we? Let's go back.
I can do it. I can do it.
Got it.
I'll send it to you, Perry.
Hey, Rochelle.
Yes, ma'am.
Bye,
I just have
y'all.
I just have a quick question, Rochelle.
Yes. Who's talking?
This is I mean, I think, is this the Rochelle with the Michigan Justice?
Michigan Education Justice Coalition, yep.
Okay, I got a question. Do you think they're going to be doing carpooling to Lansing?
If you there's a spot on the form that if you need like any kind of assistance with carpooling or accessibility, and we'll try to help coordinate that.
Okay,
If
'cause
you're coming from Detroit, we're doing a 40-person van from Detroit. or
I'm
bus.
I'm coming from Troy. I just am not really confident. I'm not a real confident driver. That's why I'm asking. That's just me. I'm just asking.
Yeah, if you in the form that you need someone to reach out to you about carpooling or something like that, then I will get back with you. And we'll find somebody for you to ride with.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Molly, I just said, I think we should link the actual Ask Docs in there. You can
Say
do-
they should be in there. I know, that's exactly, we should link it.
you can do a link that says view only, and that way if we change it, it won't matter because they'll always have the most updated version.
I'll add that in.
Yeah.
Otherwise, does it look okay?
Yeah, otherwise it's perfect. I'm excited to get it out.
I worked my butt off this morning to make sure, like, and last night to make sure. that we were done.
I'm sorry, I don't know how I missed that, but there was a lot. There was
No,
a
lot.
going on this morning.
All right, y'all. Alex, good work. There's
Yeah.
totally a need for this. Perry, good job, committee leads. And thanks for joining us, folks.
Have a good evening. All
Bye,
right,
everybody.
Alex, when you are ready for me to close the Zoom, let me know.
I think we're good.
You're good? All right, let's do
Think
All
it.
right, bye, y'all.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, Donald.